Hey guys, it's Deborah. I wanted to introduce you to a new pattern in my Ravelry shop called Flowers in Bloom. It's for this bag here. It's using a crochet technique called Tapestry Crochet, and I'm going to break down the technique for you to kind of help clarify because it can be a little tricky. I have this 24/7 cotton by Lion Brand. This is the yarn that I used for the bag, and it's a fantastic yarn for any bag pattern that you want to use, but it works really great with this one. And I've been using this bag every day for about 4 months, and you can barely see anywhere. There's a few little spots where it hits the bottom of like the table or chairs or the floor when I put it down, but for the most part it still looks just as beautiful as the day that I finished it. So it's a wonderful yarn, and I would highly recommend using it for this pattern. Okay, the pattern only uses a single crochet, but the great thing about it is that it has all these wonderful colors in it, but you never have to cut the yarn and restart and have a lot of knots that typically come from changing the colors so often. So I'm going to break down how I did this if you're not familiar with the tapestry crochet technique. Okay, so for this pattern, I'm using 5 different colors. So what I like to do is group them together. So I have 2 colors together, and then these 2 colors together, the magenta, and this lavender color. And then I keep the main color off to the side. And I separate these 2 to kind of help contain the I should say, the amount of tangles that you can get from having so many different types of yarn. So what I do is I separate them, and then I will put the 2 colors in kind of, I keep the 2 colors, a set of the 2 colors to one side and the other set to the other side. And while I'm doing it, I keep the 2 different groups separated by kind of holding one more in front and one more in back, and you'll see what I mean as I get going here. So to start this, I just put my ends off to the side like this. Later on, I went in and wove them in and tied some knots, but for the beginning, I just went ahead and laid it across the back of my work, and then I started with doing this during just a basic part of the bottom. You can see on the pattern there, it just starts with the blue in the center and then the colors on the outside. So when it was time for me to add these, I just went ahead and laid them on the back with probably, I'd say, about 3 inches worth of tail. That way I could tie them in later. Okay, so I like to go through both the front and the back of this V here when I crochet. I like the look of it on this bag, and I like the durability of it, to be honest, because I have 2. I feel more secure that I've got two loops holding it together. You can go through the front or just the back or just the front. It's up to you. It will change a little bit of how the pattern looks to go through just the back loop, but you can if you would prefer that. Okay, so when you tapestry crochet, you're going to go through the next stitch, and you can see that the yarn that you're not working with sits on top of that crochet hook that went through. And by wrapping, you're actually wrapping around those yarns, almost like you're creating a core with a rope. And you're going to bring the yarn through and then create your single crochet stitch. So you can see that you've actually wrapped around those extra strands. And you can tell here by keeping these in the front and keeping those ones in the back, you're able to help contain the tangles that come from having them all together. And when I do it, I just kind of keep them like this. Use my thumb to keep one down. You're still going to always go, when you're crocheting, you're always going to go around all of them. Whoa, camera falling there. But by keeping them one in the front and one group in the back, you keep that tangle when it's time to start changing your colors. Okay, so I'm going to work a couple here so you can see keep it on camera, my technique. And this might not work for everyone. This worked for me. If this doesn't work for you, please find your own, like keep practice with it and find a way that makes it comfortable for you, because it can be kind of tricky. Now, my first little big tip here is that you can see on the back as I've gone, I've just been holding these with my finger and the tension, and you can see that there's some loops here. Okay, so in order to get rid of those, what you do is you kind of pull these tight. Now, if you pull too tight, what will end up happening is that you will bunch the stitches together and it will create a wave in your pattern, and you don't want to do that. Oh, I keep bumping this. So I really highly suggest paying very close attention to how tight you pull these and be consistent. It doesn't matter if they're in the back. In the back, you can see the colors in the back. You really just don't want to have to see you don't want to see a bunch of them in the front. This one will be okay, but you don't want loops in the front. So don't pull too tight, because it will gather and it will start to bunch and it will not look pleasant. So keep it somewhat taut, but not like tight. You don't want to gather the stitches. Okay, so when you're ready to change colors, I'm going to do one more and kind of give you this next loop that comes through is going to be the top stitch for your next stitch. Okay, so for the next crochet. So when you're ready to change colors, that's actually when you change. So let's say that I've got a blue square and my next square is going to be this magenta color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that magenta and I'm going to pull it through right now, because that will create the magenta top for my next stitch. So I can drop that blue yarn, pick up that magenta, and let's say now I have 2 magenta squares and then a teal. So I'm going to work my first magenta square, and now I already have the top of my second magenta square. So I come in, but now it's a teal square. So I'm going to drop that magenta and pick up the teal. Okay. And I'm trying to make sure that I keep things somewhat organized here. Even if you find that these are like going over, don't worry about that. That's not going to be a big problem. So now I've got my teal color. I have pulled these 2 forward. I've pulled a little taut on my back yarn here to make sure that it's tight, and I'm going to pull that teal through those loops. Now you can see this has kind of gotten loose here, and that's not a problem. You can just pull with your magenta. I apologize, my children are enjoying this spring day and they are having all kinds of fun out there, so hopefully you can hear me well. All right, so now I'm going to go and I'm going to work my teal square, but the next one is going to be blue. The next square in my chart is blue, so I'm going to go back to that blue. I'm going to finesse all my yarn, and then I'm going to come back, pull that tight to make sure that this is all nice and even. And now I've got several blue squares, so I can just work that around the yarn, and I'll show you. I probably do this every five or 6 stitches, where I will work several stitches and then I will go back, I'll turn it around, and you can see where, well, number 1, I forgot that. You can see that that got lost, but also this yellow is kind of making some loops. If I pull, it flattens that out, and I've pulled a little on the purple and the magenta, and it's kind of straightened everything out nice and flat. You see that? These colors, like I said, seeing these colors in the back is not going to matter as long as on the front it looks clean and crisp and you can't see any yarn peeking through. It's going to be okay. You can see on mine, The outside, you can't hardly see any, I mean a few spots you can see the color peeking through. In the back, you can see more of the color, but you can't see it out on the front, and that's all that matters. Now this bag only comes with one pocket on the inside. It's a nice large pocket. I, to be honest, was so excited to use it that I didn't even think about putting a lining in it, but you most certainly can put a felt or a fabric lining with a zipper or a magnetic closure here. You can even use 2 straps to make it more of a tote. I did a weaved strap because I wanted to learn how to weave, so I thought, well, what better way to do that here. But the fabric it creates, this tapestry crochet, is so thick that you can sew on a fabric strap, you can sew on a leather strap, you can even sew on a flat nylon weave strap. They would all work wonderful for it. So please don't be afraid to be creative. You can crochet a strap, you can crochet a short, you know, one that's this wide and then crochet it however long, or you can start with a long one and crochet long strips that go down. Please be creative with it. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can enjoy this bag and enjoy making your own little signature mark on it. I added the tassels from the ends just by twisting and then tying the knots. So hopefully I was able to answer some questions that you guys might have about tapestry crochet. Please let me know if there are any other questions that you have, and let me know any kind of bags or patterns that you'd like for me to create. I would love to know. Thanks, and have a great day.